Hi, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Sisterhood, whether you're in the room or online. It is great to see you today. We are in for another treat. Those that are in person, have you all enjoyed your coffees from the new coffee shop? And if you haven't yet, the bookshop's there so you can go have a look afterwards. But we are really, really excited. I'm very privileged this morning. Elizabeth is coming up in just a few minutes to share with us. Yeah, shout out. Whoop, 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 whoop. Holla. And as ever, we're going through the book of James. If this is your first time, that's absolutely fine. Each preach is standalone, but we have gone the whole way through the book of James, and it has been fantastic and so brutally challenging because James just speaks harsh truth. So I know Liz is probably really nervous because James always comes with a challenge, but she's going to be great. We're really expectant. Let's give Liz a hand as she comes and shares with us. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Wonderful. So nice to see you, and so nice to see the girls in the creche room. Whether you hear me or not, I don't know because of all the noise with the little children, but it's lovely to have you here. It's really interesting because, I read through my Bible. I have my Bible online, and I have it downloaded on my iPad. So what I like about that is I can read it, and then I can highlight bits, and I can put notes in there and things like that. When I came to this bit of James, there are no highlights, there are no notes. I've obviously read this many, many times, and it has done nothing for me. So I was like, oh Lord, I'm really going to have to think hard. So I really, really had to dig deep. And it's all about money. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And the Bible is full of references about money. And something funny I read. So for you girls out there, if you're between the ages of 0 and 18, what a girl really needs is good parents. And then between the ages of 18 and 35, she needs good looks, obviously to trap someone, right? And then between 35 and 55, she needs a good personality because the looks have faded. Okay, and after 55, she just needs money. So I thought that was quite funny, but actually it's not true. But we all need money, but we also need to know how to steward money and what does the Bible say about money, because the Bible has so much to say about money, okay? So I am in chapter 5, verses 1 to 6, okay? Chapters 5, verses 1 to 6. Now, when James is writing this, James, just to backtrack a bit, James was a brother of Jesus, and this is one of the first books, it was the first book written in the New Testament to the early church. So he's the pastor of this early church, and this book is written for the early church. These first 6 verses are not written for the early church. He's actually directing this to the people outside the church. It's really interesting. So these first 6 verses that I've been allocated to speak on is for the people outside the local church. It's for the ones in the world. And you think, well, why did he write a letter to the church and he's directing these 6 verses to the people out there? It's because, sometimes in the Bible there's a prophetic statement that's given to say, there's a warning coming, there's something coming, and it's declared, and it's actually declared for everybody. And so James, in these 6 verses, is declaring this prophetically and speaking into the culture of the day so that they will understand, and also the church that he is pastoring will understand what God has to say about it. He's speaking about money, and I'm going to read it just now, but he gives a huge warning to the people outside the church. But also, people are getting saved all the time and finding Jesus all the time and coming into the church. So this is almost a warning to them, to say to the people, hey, I know you found Jesus and you've come into the church, but we want you to know there's a different culture that exists here. The culture you've been used to that exists out with the church, you have to say goodbye to that. And you have to start conforming to kingdom culture. So without further ado, I'm just going to read these few verses here, okay? James 5, verses 1 to 6. Now listen, you rich people. Weep and wail because of the misery that is coming on you. So this is a prophetic statement he's making about what will be coming. And it actually, from the time he wrote this, about 25 years later, there was a total destruction of Jerusalem. So it is prophetically speaking about what's happening in the future. Now listen, you rich people, and wail because of the misery that is coming on you. Your wealth has rotted, and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. It sounds really scary. You have hoarded wealth in these last days. Look, the wages you have paid the workers who have mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of God. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves. You have condemned and murdered the innocent ones who was not opposing you. So it's a real warning to the rich people. And there's a few themes that I'm going to unpack, okay? The themes of, riches will fade, about the injustice of things, and self-indulging and luxury, okay? Right. So 2 questions I wanted to start with, okay? Is being rich wrong? Is being rich wrong? Is it a sin to be rich? And the answer, thankfully, is no. It's not a sin to be rich. If you read the Bible, there are lots and lots of very well-off people in the Bible. You've got, Abraham, and you've got Solomon, and you've got Job, who is very well-off. You look at the New Testament, Joseph of Arimathea, he was a very well-off person. God is not condemning wealth, okay? Being rich is not a sin, and God sometimes chooses to bless people with incredible wealth. But money, if we look at money, money is neutral, okay? We just take money and we put it there. Money is neither good nor bad. It's just neutral, okay? It has nothing. But the desire for money is what corrupts, okay? So that's what he's saying. The desire to get rich will ensnare you. Loving money is the root of all evil. So money is not the root of all evil. But loving money and having it as a wrong priority is what will drag you away, okay? If you go back to the very first sin in the Bible, with Cain and Abel, it's just come to me, so I'll just speak about it. I hope it makes sense. Cain and Abel, they were there in the Bible, and the first sin obviously was jealousy, because, they both came with an offering. Cain's offering was something he managed to pick up from the farm, said, yeah, you can have some of my produce. But Abel's offering was actually, going to be a sacrifice. It was a huge sacrifice. And that's the difference. And it's funny, it was the very first story in the Bible, the very first big sin in the Bible was when, the act of giving can be seen in different ways, okay? And it's the same with money. Money is neutral, but how it's looked at is different. It says in 1 Timothy 6, verses 6 to 10. I won't read it all. I'll read the beginning and the end. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of the world. Then he goes on and speaks about those different things. And the end of that he says, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. And earlier on, when we were looking at James chapter 4, verse 3, he said there, when you ask and you don't receive, it's because you're asking with the wrong motives. So sometimes the things we ask for, if you go and say, God, I need to win this lottery ticket, what was it going to be for, So the Lord sees our heart. We can actually say wonderful prayers, but he actually knows the motives of our heart, okay? So it's not that money is wrong. So it is okay to be rich, okay? I'm not asking you to get rid of all your money and that. So being rich is not a sin. We've got that sorted. The second thing is, what is a right view of money? Okay? So what is a right view of money? Money is neutral, like I said. It is not the key of happiness. If I put money there, that will not bring happiness, okay? We sometimes think it will, but it's not. Money is neutral. There's a right and a wrong way to gain money and to get money. There's two different things. We can access money. There's good and wrong. There's good and bad ways of getting money. There's also good and bad ways of using money, okay? So money in itself is just an inanimate object, okay? It's nothing. But loving money and worshiping money is what brings us down, okay? And some of you are wondering, I wonder if I really love money. So here's a few questions. I saw this thing here and I thought it was quite cute, Here's a few tests to see if you really have a problem with money, okay? I had a few challenges with some of these. If you find yourself thinking about money all the time, okay? If money becomes a major conversation between you and your friends and you find yourself constantly talking about money. If you compare how much you make to someone else and how much more you could get. If you find it very stingy to give, if you find it really difficult to share, then you have an issue with money. If you love spending money in a compulsive way, then you have a problem with money. And if you love spending your time scheming and planning and bargaining with God if he gave you money and you would do this and you would do that, then you have a problem. It was interesting reading those things because there were 6 little pointers, and I challenged myself. I thought, so I have to be careful. It's not just rich people that have problems with money. Can I tell you, it's anybody can have a problem with money. Someone who doesn't have a lot, they can have a huge problem with money. They can also be the most generous of people. Remember the story about the widow's mite? She gave everything she had. It was such a small offering, but she offered it all up because her heart was right. And so actually, it's not money it's a problem, it's how we view it. So let's get into this scripture here, okay? So the right view, so we wondered what the wrong view was. The right view for money is that money is a tool to provide for what we need. And money is what's given to us, and whatever God gives us, we have to be contented with it. And it speaks so clearly about, in Proverbs 23 verses 4, it says, do not wear yourself out trying to get rich. It speaks of, the Bible is full of verses about speaking about wealth and all that kind of stuff. And it's very wise as a Christian to actually think, what? I'm not going to just take my money and just throw it all away. Be wise with it. Put money aside for your pension plans. Put money aside for your retirement plans. It's important to be wise. It's important to pace yourself. So wisdom that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, wisdom comes into every area of our life. So let's get into this here. So money is temporary. That's one thing we need to know. If you're taking notes, money is temporary. Nothing lasts. How many times have you gone on holidays and you've gone to see, ancient ruins and buildings, and they say, well, actually, this is what it did look like. This is what it used to look like. This was how incredible it used to be. You'll go and see palaces that have been demolished by armies coming in, and you think, wow. You read the Bible of what the temple was like that Solomon built, and you go to see it, and it's just a bunch of ruins. It's nothing like it was. Nothing lasts, and money doesn't last either. So there are, everything is temporary. And there's 4 indictments that he speaks about here: hoarding, fraud, self-indulgence, and murder. That's the 4 things he wants to give warning to. And these warnings here are probably speaking to, although he's speaking to the people outside the church, he's also speaking to the people within the church. However, if they're poor or if they're rich, he's speaking to them and saying there are 4 different things you need to take note and you need to be careful that you don't do, okay? The first one is hoarding. And it speaks, the 3 things that were very, very valuable in those days was grain, because they were farmers. So the grain and the produce of the land was really huge. The garments that were woven from the animals, that was a huge industry. And the second one was the gold and the silver that showed that you were quite wealthy. So that was the 3 kind of industries, the 3 kind of main things that all the people fully understood. So when he says, be careful, because in your hoarding and in storing up stuff, thinking I've got it all, your grain can actually rot away. The moths can quietly come in and your garments can all be ruined, and your gold and silver can tarnish. I don't know if you've ever had any. I remember being given a silver tea set by my mother-in-law, and I just it looked beautiful, and I put it out there. I didn't realize, but it was getting duller and duller, and she came in one day and she said, oh my goodness, and she took the thing back. She used to come in and clean it all the time, and I didn't really understand how to clean silver. And then one day she decided she would take it back because I wasn't cleaning it very well, because she was scared it would tarnish. And And it does tarnish. Things are not built to last. And so why are we spending our time hoarding? There's a program on television called Hoarding. I don't know if you've ever seen it. And it is so sad and tragic how these people just begin to hoard, just their insecurities. And many times they've come from very poor backgrounds. So actually, although James is talking to the people out there, he's talking to a lot of poor Christians within his own fellowship and saying, you know, you might have come from a poor background, and your background will make you want to store things and hoard things. You know, if you didn't grow up well off, like most of us haven't, then you learn that a value in clothes and things. And I have to watch myself because, you know, when as a little girl growing up, I grew up in the mission field. And so we didn't have very much. And I have to challenge myself. You know, I find myself wanting to buy things because they're in the sale. And I have to say, do I need this or do I not need this? Because sometimes I buy things just because I can. And just because, you know, I never was able to many years ago, and now I can. And then I have to challenge myself to say, but do I need it? You know? How am I using my money? How am I looking at it and thinking and challenging myself with it, you know? Because we can't take anything with us. So there's two ways, you know, we think of if I think of, so, you know, you look at these beautiful, I love watching Grand Designs, and you probably think I watch TV all the time, but there's a few programs I like to watch. But Grand Designs is a program, you know, and they'll show you all these different things, and then they'll say, and this is your walk-in closet. And the other day I looked at it and I thought, you know, a family in India could probably live in the size of that closet. And you suddenly realize we have got all of our things all higgledy-piggledy. Our culture tells us we need to have more. Our culture tells us we don't have enough. Our culture tells us we deserve it. And so we start hoarding it and we start saving it and keeping it and things. And the Lord's saying, you just don't know when your life will just instantly change. When something will just suddenly happen and it'll be taken away from you. So he warns them about hoarding. You know, in Matthew chapter 6, verses 19, it says, do not, isn't the Bible so beautiful? Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths do not destroy, where thieves will not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, that is where your heart will be also. You know, about 11 years ago, my dad was, you know, really in the last stages of cancer, and he realized he was going to be passing away quite soon. And he was putting his affairs in order, but he didn't like to talk much about it because we were all hoping and praying that Jesus would heal him, you know. And he was thinking this, and we hadn't realized until actually he had passed away. We got a letter from the Bible Society, and the Bible Society said, oh, dear John, thank you so much for your very generous gift. And it was thousands of pounds. And what had happened is my dad had looked at everything, and he had carefully seen everything. And my dad had spent his life storing up treasure in heaven. And he had looked at everything he had, and he had given each of us kids a small little thing. He had made sure that my mum was looked after because he was a faithful husband. And then he looked at what he had and he said, is there any way I could just put some more treasure in the bank in heaven for when I go? And you see, that's what he was doing, constantly storing up treasure in heaven. He could have left that for us kids. But I remember reading the letter and thinking, you know, thank you, Lord, that he didn't leave it for us. That he was just thinking, this is my final act of being able to fill up my treasure pot in heaven. So many of us are great in filling up our treasure pots on earth and doing things and filling them up and you know, looking at the stock market and things. And none of that's wrong. But we forget to start building up our treasure in heaven. We think, you know, when the kids grow up, I'll have that time to do this. When you know, God, if you give me this special ministry, if you help me, then I'll start doing that. But actually, it's now. You start putting up your treasure in heaven where no one can take it. And there's so many different things. The second thing about frauding and cheating, that's the second warning. And this is to all of us, you know. It says, be really careful. If wealth has been gained unjustly then and wrongly, then it's probably wrong. Okay? Be honorable. It's sometimes difficult to sometimes it's challenging. You know, it's funny, the other day I was in the supermarket and in Tesco, and I was getting all my groceries, and I suddenly realized I paid for my groceries, and I thought I didn't have my bag on me. And I took one of the bags, filled my groceries, and I was in such a rush, and I thought, I can't now go and pay 20p for the bag. And I thought, I'm in such a rush, so I thought, okay, Lord, I know what I'm going to do. So I went home, undid my groceries. The next time I was back, about 2 or 3 days later, I got my groceries. I had my own bag. And then I purchased a bag, and then I said to the lady, I said, by the way, I'm purchasing a bag, but I want to give it back to you because the other day I took a bag and I hadn't paid for it, but I was in such a rush. And she goes, I can't believe you're so honest. And I thought, you know what, I said, you know, it was just a little witness. It was 20 pence. It wasn't a big deal. Tesco wasn't going to go down the tubes. But we need to be honorable with everything. You know, it's very easy for us to look at the rich people and say, oh my goodness, they're such fraudsters. They're cheating people. They're doing this. Let's look at within our own hearts. Check our own hearts. Let's see that we are being honorable and things like that in every area, okay? You know, I find it's amazing. Nothing is new underneath the sun, is there? Nothing is new. Everything comes around in circles. In this day, there was people cheating. In this day, there was people hoarding. And guess what? The same thing happens nowadays. And you know, how many times do you turn on the news and they speak about having a fair salary and things like that? And think about slavery. What's going on in our world just now? What about people that are taken on and they're just given a backhander and they're not paid fully? That's cheating. That's doing them out of their, you know, of what's rightly due them. And you know, slavery is more than it ever was. Why didn't we listen to James 2,000 years ago? Why are we still having all these issues now with money? So just being careful. You know, the good news is that Jesus knows and Jesus sees. We don't need to worry about what everybody else is doing. Leave that to God. Let him judge. We just need to guard our hearts and make sure that we're doing the right thing. Okay? And then the third thing is self-indulgence. People given to lavish lifestyles. I mean, I happened to see another program, and I didn't watch it because I just was so disgusted by it, but they were talking about the best, the most luxurious hotels in the world. And I started watching it, and I just felt sick inside, you know? And it was so easy for me to judge that and think, oh, Lord, I would never do that. But I need to look at the luxury God has given me and let me judge myself. Let me look at what I do with what I have. Okay, not what they do. Let God judge them. But what kind of luxury do I live in? Do I need that? You know, I have to check myself. Do I really need that new coat? Do I really need that extra pair of shoes? Do I, you know, and sometimes we're very good in talking ourselves into, well, you know, you deserve this. You need this, you know. And I found myself doing that. So we just need to be careful there. And evaluate our lifestyle. Make sure that that what we are doing is right, because everything we have been given, whether it's large or small, we've been given to steward it. And this building is fantastic. And when I've been speaking to people from different churches, I've said, we really believe God has given us this building to steward for the Church of Aberdeen. You know, let this building be a place that we're stewarding it, that we can support other churches, that we can put on conferences for the Church of Jesus Christ, that we can do things for the kingdom of God in this place. We need to steward everything we have. Stewarding the talents God has given us, stewarding what we have is so important, you know. God makes some people rich, and then, you know, they can be very, very successful, and sometimes they steward their money well, and sometimes they're not good stewards of their money. And you know, sometimes it's very well hidden, sometimes we don't see what happens, and it's really sad. You know, thinking of the prosperity gospel, you know, that was preached, and people speaking, you know, if you seed money and if you give money, then God will bless you. My Bible doesn't say that. My Bible speaks about bringing your tithes and offerings into church. It doesn't say about seeding something into someone's ministry so that you will be blessed. That's manipulation. So we must be really, really careful with all these kind of things. The prosperity gospel, you know, you know, sometimes you read stories about people who have become celebrity Christians and they've got a fleet of luxury cars and different things. I was speaking to somebody and they were telling me about their pastor back in Nigeria. And she said, he has such such an extravagant lifestyle, because they couldn't understand the cars that we were driving. And she said, he has 7 or 8 Hummers. I didn't even know what a Hummer was until she said that story to me. And I thought, but you can only drive one car at a time, and there's so much. And to have that wealth and live in a country where poverty is so obvious is so hard. So let's not sit in judgment. Let's see what God has given us and how we steward it well. And in 2 Timothy 3, it speaks about in the last days which we are living in just now. But you will be aware that in the final days, the culture of society will become extremely fierce. People will be self-centered, lovers of themselves, and obsessed with money. They will be ungrateful and ungodly. I thought, wow, what a word that was spoken by Paul way back in those early days when he was writing to Timothy. Ungrateful and ungodly, and that's what it's like. And there's 3 characteristics that's mentioned there. Lovers of self. That's what we're like, this big selfie culture that we live in. And the second thing is lovers without natural affection and the demise of the family. That's what he speaks about. That they'll be obsessed with money and they'll put everything aside to just seek their own pleasures. And seeking pleasure more than God. And so these are real warnings that were given 2,000 years ago that we could apply, pull them from the scriptures and apply them to what we do and learn from them, okay? The 4th thing is murder, okay? And you're thinking, oh, phew, I might have been guilty of the other things, but I haven't killed anybody, so I'm okay here, But I just think, and that is true, we haven't killed anybody, but to murder something is when you just totally snuff it out and there's no more life anymore. And we find stories, you hear stories, and you've known of FBI stories in the past where they have gone and adjusted things so that they can make sure that the will is written out for them so that they get the money, and then they've killed their parents. There's been some horrendous stories of things like that. So things do happen. And we just have to be very careful that in how we treat people, in how we love on people, that we are not snuffing out their relationship with Jesus. That we're not murdering their dreams and their hopes. That by our lifestyle, we're not causing them to fall away from Jesus and go, you know what? They're a bunch of hypocrites. I want nothing to do with Christianity. That's murdering their hope and their ability to love Jesus and live a godly life. So that's how I kind of interpreted that bit. And Solomon's words in the Bible, there is nothing new underneath the sun. And we just have to be so careful when we think about money and we think about all the stuff that can go wrong. So I just wanted to land this money plane and to just say a few different things at the end here. 25 years after writing this, there was I think it was the Roman Empire. There's a guy called Titus, and he came in and totally destroyed Jerusalem. The whole place was smashed up. There was 1 million Jews murdered. And that all happened. And I wonder how many Christians, the church was scattered. I wonder how many Christians thought, yep, James did warn us. James did say this would happen. God does see and God does bring judgment. And how I would end this is by saying money is it is an inanimate object. Okay, money is neutral. Money is like fire. Okay, that's how I would see it. Money is like fire. If fire is properly used, if fire is properly controlled, it is a good thing. You need fire to cook. You need fire to cleanse, and to get rid of all the dross when you're making silver and that. So if fire is used carefully and properly and under control, fire is very, very powerful. Fire is a helpful tool, but if we are careless with fire, and if we use it carelessly, and if we use it with evil intent, you've heard about people who have, thrown bombs and set places on fire, it can be a terrible force that destroys and causes mayhem and destruction. And that's like money. Money, if it's well used, well stewarded, well thought through, then money can be a powerful tool in the hands of God. You know, some of the most incredible gifts that we have in our church is when people have, and the church worldwide, is people have become rich philanthropists, and they've said, you know what, I'm just going to give it all to God. And you know what, they have blessed millions of people, thousands of ministries have happened because they have held on to it lightly and just used it. So if it is, you know, if fire, like fire, if it's controlled and if it's used, it can be one of the most powerful tools. You know, on my dad's grave, I've said this before, but on my dad's tombstone, at the very bottom it says, "Only one life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last." And so you only have one life, and you want to live it well, and live it, you know, use it to the best of your abilities. I bumped into somebody who used to attend our church many years ago, hasn't been to church for many years, and I happened to bump into him in a shop, and we got talking, and he was quite taken aback. I says, "Oh, I hadn't seen you for so many years." And we got talking. I says, "How are you doing?" "Well, just living my life, getting by, should retire in 2 or 3 years." I says, "What about church?" "Nah, not really for me anymore. Still love God, still read his word. I just love the Bible." And I walked away from that conversation. He couldn't tell me enough how much he loved Jesus and how much he loved the Bible. And I thought, you know, Jesus said, "Love me, but love my bride." I've given you talents. Use your talents. Use your money. And I thought, this guy with incredible talent, great gift, lots of stuff, lots of wonderful resources, he's just going to live his life. I said, "No, tell me about your boys. How are your boys doing?" "Yeah, they're not interested in God, but I tell them about Jesus." And I thought, you know, the baton's been dropped. The baton of faith has been dropped because you didn't just live your life. You didn't just tell about it. You didn't live, because you didn't live it out, and, you know, you told them, and they don't see it, you know. And I was just thinking about my dad's gravestone, you know, oh, it is only one life we have. How do we live it out? What do we do? How do we steward things? How well do we do it? You know, how do we hold money? Do we hold it lightly, or does money hold us? And there was 2 things I wanted to leave you with. Are you a conduit, or are you a reservoir? A conduit is like a channel. And this channel can go, you know, it takes water in and it gives water out. And on this channel, ships can go on it, people can swim on it, you know, fish and life can go on it, and it's just a moving channel all the time. But a reservoir hoards water, and it just gets deeper and deeper, and there's a measuring, and it says how much water there is, and a drought season goes down, then the reservoir goes up, and a reservoir is like that. And we just need to check all of ourselves, no matter how wealthy we are or how poor we might be. What does it say in the Bible? Are we hoarding it, or are we being a channel of blessing? And I just wanted to end with Proverbs 30 verses 8 and 9. It says, "Give me neither property nor riches." Solomon speaking. "Give me neither property nor riches. Feed me with the bread that is my portion. Otherwise I may have too much and deny you and say, 'Who is God?' Or I might become so poor and steal and profane the name of God." So Solomon was saying, you know what? There's no point having all this wealth if you don't use it well. And there's no point being poor and you become evil in your intent. Just live and be contented with what God's given you. And 2 cute little things here. The world's view is love money and use people. But the Bible's view is love people and use money. Hope you got something from that. I found it difficult to prepare because I thought I wanted to come with a bit lighter, because James is quite heavy in how he speaks. And I thought, I don't want you all going out here going, "Oh my goodness, she's telling us to give all our money away." I was challenged myself. I think we're all okay, girls. But it's just good to remind you. It's good to just sharpen up. And, you know, when your nails start growing, it's important to just file them down and get them a nice shape again. So I think with James, all these little areas, all these ouch areas in our life, we just need to look at them, file them down, and see how things go. Okay? Hope you enjoyed that. I'll just hand back to Leanne.
Wow, so good. I feel like James has got more of a chisel than a nail file on me, if I'm honest. So good. What great analogies. I love it when Liz shares. She always just unpacks it in a way that I've maybe not thought about or adds personality to it. But really, really challenging. Love that last quote as well, to use money and love people, to really make sure that with our talents we are... Don't you just think the whole of James, he's really looking at the heart and is attacking our motives. We put it on the external stuff, but God's always just getting us to look inside that little bit and see actually what's going on the inside. Because none of these things are bad, but it's where our heart is at towards them at the moment. So thank you so much. That was great, Liz. Let's give her another hand, and online, shout out your whoops. So good. Thank you so much. And a great way actually to put this into practice, there is the Equip bookshop downstairs. You know, we find it so easy to go and spend £5 on our coffee and cake, but we look around a Christian bookshop and think, oh, £8 for a book, I'm not sure. Even though that's going to grow us way more, it's going to shape our heart maybe way more than that coffee is going to grow us in a different way. But so, you know, there's just so many practical ways. But the coffee shop is open, no judgment. I've already had mine. I'm not saying coffee's bad. Yeah, conversation for another day, isn't it? I know, steady. And the Equip bookshop is open too. And as well, please do sign up. You know, we don't do these things because we need them, but we just want to love people, like Elizabeth says, and put them as a priority. And just a way of serving people is to maybe be on welcome, to be that smiley face that says hi as people come in. And actually for hospitality, just to put the hot water in their kettles and make sure things are done. And if you think you can do either of those things, please do sign up. It takes all of us to make something like this work. And what's amazing is when you sign up, you own it, and it becomes your privilege to do it. And I know when I am part of owning it, I find it easier to invite people to it, and you make it your own. And so please don't think, oh, I'm not sure if I could do it. I'll do it with you if you want to, and we can walk it through together. But do sign up where you can. And then Sunday, church online, if you haven't managed to get a place this week. Have a blessed week, everyone. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you again next Thursday. I hope I've not forgotten anything.